Republican lawmaker is attempting to impeach new US President Joe Biden already. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene this morning filed 2 articles of impeachment against President Biden. They allege abuse of power when he served as vice president. She says Biden withheld billions of dollars in US aid to Ukraine in order to prevent an investigation into his son's business dealings.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, what, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
According to longtime lefty lawyer Alan Dershowitz, Trump had every right to make his Capitol speech hill. And Dershowitz himself says today the Conservatives are speaking up for free speech because the left is repressing their free speech. The left may have become so certain of their own truths that they don't think there's any need for dissent. Many support cancel culture, which is a direct denial of both freedom of speech and due process. The certainty breeds intolerance, says Dershowitz. James, Rita, what do you make of that?
Well, I think that, as Tim Blair said the other day in the Daily Telegraph, he said that, it's amazing. Usually after a dictator falls, and that's what they think of Trump, he's a dictator, you see an explosion of free speech. But now all of a sudden we're seeing free speech, repressed, and people kicked off Twitter, and other social media sites shut down. And, people basically being hounded and said, do not speak up about this, otherwise there will be consequences. So, I think Alan Dershowitz is absolutely right. Dershowitz, has been a long, honorable lefty on this. He's always said that, even Hitler would deserve a defense. And I think that his moral compass on this is absolutely sound. The left used to be very pro-free speech, but as I've been saying for years, they were only pro-free speech to the point where it could get them into power. And once they get power, they're happy for it to go and pull that ladder up behind them.
Rita?
Yeah, there's a nasty totalitarian streak in the modern left. It really is quite sinister, the way that they want to shut down debate and the way they want to just categorise anything that they don't agree with as not just only wrong, but inherently hateful, harmful, dangerous, and that anybody who possibly holds those views is somehow on the side of extremists. I mean, some of the positions that they're putting forward are so fringe and radical, and yet if you are part of the mainstream who speaks up, if you say something like, well, I don't know, I think women's sports should be reserved for women, biological women,
how
then
dare
suddenly
you, Rita?
you're
How
a
dare
bigot.
you? Rita.
You're a terrorist.
How
You're
dare
an
you say that?
extremist.
I can't believe you actually said that, Mike.
Authorities in Tacoma, Washington, launching an investigation into a disturbing incident. A Tacoma police car plowing through a group of people in the downtown area, according to eyewitness videos and statements. And a warning, the video we are about to show you is disturbing. So let's play some of this new video just coming into our MSNBC newsroom. This is why police ended up coming to the scene in the first place. Reports of street racers and a crowd of people that were blocking part of the road here. So you see here that video, that Tacoma police car plowing through that crowd. And then you saw the police officer not only hitting a group of people, but running somebody over. We're queuing it up again so you can see. Now, a spokesperson for the police department here says the officer is believed to have sped up after the crowd began pounding on his windows, and he stopped a short distance after. 2 people were taken to the hospital after this incident. 1 has been released. We're going to stay on top of this, gather some more video from the scene, and continue to update you throughout the day. Andy,
you mentioned before how the left under Biden refused to kind of acknowledge what has been going on in Portland and other places. Just have a listen here to Jen Psaki, who's the new press secretary, Joe Biden's press secretary. She's asked specifically to comment on the situation of Antifa in Portland, but she evades it. And notice how she tries to suggest that all the violence and riots in America now are simply due to what happened 2 weeks ago on Capitol Hill. Have a listen, Andy.
Does the president have any comment on the ongoing violence in Oregon and Washington state that we've seen in recent days?
Well, certainly we had our team on the ground, our national security team, even before 12:01, early in the morning on Inauguration Day, because we wanted to be able to monitor events happening across the country and any unrest that was resulting from the last couple of weeks.
So, Andy, your thoughts on that?
So the Capitol had thousands of troops pour in to protect the Capitol building because there was a fear that Trump supporters would not allow the peaceful transfer of power to happen. The troops should have been sent to Portland and Seattle because on Inauguration Day there were multiple riots. There were 15 arrests in Portland alone, and those backgrounds that I looked into, around half of them are people who were arrested and released and had their charges dropped last year. So this is a nightmare version of Groundhog Day.
Rita?
Well, what happened during that summer of rioting? We saw a lot of businesses burned down and people bashed, but were federal facilities also attacked? Could there be some comparisons you could make with the riots at the Capitol, and was the response in any way similar?
Yeah, so everything that the rioters did at the Capitol Hill siege, they did in Portland and worse on federal property. So the federal courthouse in downtown was the site of weeks and weeks of nightly attempts to burn it down. With my own eyes, I saw people come with explosives, they came with knives, they came with electric power tools to try to cut into the building. They tried to barricade the federal officers inside there so they could burn down and kill them. This was open terrorism that was happening, and the response from Democrat politicians at the time and local elected officials, they described those federal officers as Trump's Gestapo and secret police.
James?
Yep.
So what then is the political program of Antifa? I mean, we know that it's very, very violent, that they target anybody who they perceive to be on the right, and they also target government buildings. What do they want? What is their goal? What do they want to happen? Or is it just simply they want chaos and violence?
The end goal is to abolish the United States, to overthrow the U.S. government. So they should be treated as an anti-government domestic terrorist movement, organization, ideology, and currently they've been given cover in the mainstream press, in academia, in every institution in America, because people don't understand the ideology. When you look at their literature, they're calling for the destabilization of local governments, and to some effect, they've had a lot of power in the Pacific Northwest. You need to remind people who are watching that last year, Antifa and BLM actually seized territory in Seattle, Washington for more than 3 weeks, and it led to multiple homicides and shootings.
Well, Andy, it's always great to chat to you. Keep safe. You're an extremely brave individual.
Oregon State Police are still investigating Representative Mike NEARMAN. The Republican from Independence has not apologized.
So this new video from the Capitol answers questions about where he was going and how long he was gone. 4 days before Christmas, a crowd of right-wing protesters gathered outside a side door at the Capitol building in Salem. When they find they can't come in, the crowd disperses, with a few protesters standing watch. That's when you see Representative Mike NEARMAN just before 8:30 a.m. open the door. That allows two men standing nearby to rush in and hold two doors open. The two then motion to others by waving their hands. Meanwhile, outside, as NEARMAN walks away, others call for the crowd to regroup at the now open doors, and a confrontation with officers is coming. But until now, we didn't know what NEARMAN did next. This new video shows he walks around the corner to where a crowd has gathered at the west entrance. NEARMAN interacts with several protesters. At the same time, OSP troopers show up at the door left open by NEARMAN and push back protesters. Outside, the new video shows NEARMAN makes his way through the crowd. At the top of the screen, you can see more protesters move around the corner to where the door is open. At the bottom of the screen, you can also see two police officers retreating from protesters. Back inside, tensions are growing as state troopers try to keep the Trump supporters out. Outside, you can see 2 minutes after NEARMAN opened the door, he walks west away from the Capitol out of view. By then, the protesters are flowing steadily towards the open door. Tensions grow as more and more people gather, demanding they have the right to be in the building while lawmakers are in session. Meanwhile, on the south side of the Capitol, you can see a police car racing down the street. You can also see NEARMAN appear on the sidewalk 4 minutes and 36 seconds after he opened the door to protesters. At that same moment, this is what police were facing. Back at the south entrance, you can see NEARMAN take out his security pass to unlock the door, and he re-enters the Capitol, where the House has continued to be in session. Back at the door he opened, rioters try to force their way into the Capitol. At least one person uses bear spray on the officers. Another hits them with the flag. Then the troopers pull back deeper into the building, followed shortly by the crowd that begins pouring in. When they meet the law enforcement officers at the glass doors, they sing the national anthem. Oh, save us, that star-spangled. Then they begin to chant as this man, identified by state police as Chandler Pappas, breaks open the door before some kind of smoke is released and police manage to push the protesters back. So I tried again to reach out to NEARMAN today. I have not heard back. House Speaker Tina Kotek fined NEARMAN and hit him with sanctions. In a statement to our news partners at the Portland Tribune, NEARMAN said, "I hope for due process and not the mob justice to which Speaker Kotek is subjecting me." He also said, when the Oregon Constitution says that the legislative proceedings shall be open, it means open.
Language, and you were discussing that, James, how the words are manipulated. Nancy Pelosi tried to get the gender language changed in the US Congress. She said, we're not going to use the words grandfather or father or mother anymore. And yet within a few days, have a listen to what she was actually saying.
I stand before you as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a daughter whose father proudly serves in this Congress.
James.
Well, I mean, look, that's just, Rowan, I'm literally shaking right now. I'm so triggered by her use of all of these words like wife and mother, when, of course, she should have said a person of marriage and a person of parenthood and, you know, all of the other sort of ridiculous things that we've spoken about on this show. It is so, you know, apparently, petromasculinity is all the big rage on the left. There was a Journal of International Studies in 2018 where they actually wrote a whole story or a whole paper on fossil fuels and and petromasculinity. It has been and the historic role of fossil fuels in perpetuating white supremacy and all of this. And it's this thing called petromasculinity. So apparently if you like to drive a car and you want to keep driving your car, you are responsible for the Ku Klux Klan and climate change and everything else.
Now, Rita, speaking of white supremacy, you've got a terrific story for us about what exactly, following from what Christopher was saying, how everything is white supremacy if you want it to be.
Oh, is this our Democrat councillor friend who's just decided everything is white supremacy? Electoral college, pillar of white supremacy. Filibustering, pillar of white supremacy. College debts, pillar of white supremacy. Even though the majority of debt, college debt, is held by white people, it's a pillar of white supremacy. So this is just a brilliant tactic from the hard left. You just label anything you don't like a pillar of white supremacy, and then anyone who argues against it, well, they're a white supremacist. Argument over.
Exactly. This fella, I can't remember this bloke's name, but he's a Democrat congressman, so he's they're now in the government. And you're right, Rita. He, as an official, government representative, is out there labelling. Here he is, this bloke, Jamal.
That's him. We finally got his picture up.
Yeah, we got him there.
Bowman.
And then we'll show you his tweet as well, where every single thing is
electoral
white
college,
supremacy.
pillar of white supremacy. Student loan debt, pillar of white supremacy.
God, as James says, it's going to be a long 4 years.
The lunatics are running the asylum.
Oh, they certainly are, Rita. Particularly in London, where Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor there, the hardcore lefty mayor, woke mayor of London, he's used the coronavirus. Paul Murray has a great line about under cover of COVID. He's used the coronavirus to block off whole areas of London, install bollards and turn them into bike lanes. But the fascinating thing, and James, I think it's happening in your part of Sydney as well, but the fascinating thing is the residents of these London suburbs took him to court, went to the higher court.
Looks
and
beautiful.
The High Court said it is illegal. They found what Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, is doing is illegal. And the London suburbs have gone to war against this. James, similar things happening in Sydney.
Well, yeah, we've seen, and again, as Paul Murray says, under cover of COVID,